This week on Behind the Pulpit, today we are joined by Sidney Bowie, who serves as the Community Engagement Officer at City Relief. City Relief is an organization that serves the unhoused community in New York City as well as here in New Jersey. He is here to talk to us a little bit about what he does and what City Relief does, as well as talk about his sermon that he preached on the Good Samaritan.
What I realized a lot of times reading coming to the story is that I would put the priest and the Levite kind of in this box and just think of them as just like these villainous characters. But when I realized and I thought through what was happening with the lawyer and the fact that he was trying to justify himself in asking this question, who is my neighbor, I had to think through, well, what would it look like for me to try to justify myself? And so I saw some questions that I think that the priest or the Levite might ask of coming upon a situation like this that are legitimate questions, that are rational questions, that make sense, but that led them, I believe, in this parable to then make choices that did not actually honor God.
Alongside that, we discuss a flurry of news stories, and just when you thought we were out, Pastor Bob pulls us right back into the Great Book War.
So I'm like sneaking out to say hello to Sidney yesterday, and Bob's got to go teach his class. The dude had a stack like a cartoon that just got out of the library, like a bibliophile. Like this guy had 10 books. If anybody was in Bob's class yesterday, how many books did he recommend in your class?
And make sure you don't miss today's Theology Sprint, as today's question is directed to our guest.
Everything about what God has done has been about taking people outside of just their immediate context and connecting with people who were different than them. If I understand that as something that has always been kind of at the heart of Christianity and also just at the heart of God throughout history, then I first come to it with the understanding that part of being a Christian, I think, is stepping outside of our boxes, stepping outside of the places that we're used to being and connecting with the people that we're used to connecting with, and making that an intentional part of our lives.
And wherever you may be watching or listening to this today, we hope you're having a wonderful day. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's edition of Behind the Pulpit.
Hey there, welcome to Behind the Pulpit for February the 26th, 2024. We're so glad you're here. This is our last Behind the Pulpit for February. I can't believe we are 2 months deep into 2024. Pastor Dave, what do you think about that?
I like the new clap your hands and start the podcast. That was awesome.
That was a move of the spirit right there. It just happened.
Wow. Look at him, man. He's so happy he's clappy. Man. Good to be with you today, Bob.
That's right. All right. And
what's going on with your shirt, man?
Well, you know what? I decided to go layered today, and I had to represent City Relief. There you go.
Superman open. I like that.
I'm wearing the City Relief today because we got a special guest from City Relief. Our special guest preacher from yesterday. Why don't you say hello?
Hey everybody, Sidney Bowie, working with City Relief, had the beautiful opportunity to be at Millington yesterday and preach, and so happy to be here on the podcast and talk a little more.
It was beautiful. You did a beautiful job. Pastor Dave was just raving after the 9 a.m. service, and I was ready to hear it at 10:45.
Oh, praise God.
It was a good word. I have a page and a half written down notes.
That is the compliment. I took a page and a half of notes.
I was trying to figure out how to take my iPhone, take a picture of the notes, and then just copy and paste the handwriting into a Word document.
You told me you could.
I think that can be done.
iPhone takes a picture and transcribes it for you.
It depends how sloppy my handwriting is, but I'm going to see if it works.
Okay.
But or I could just type it out.
Well, here's what I'll tell you.
Good stuff, though, man.
Thank you.
In our staff meeting today, there was several comments about how you like the parable of the Good Samaritan. Who doesn't know the parable of the Good Samaritan? You managed to take it and say some new things about it for some folks, and that's. We're going to get into that, but that was great. So thank you so much for bringing the word yesterday. We were glad that you were here with us then and here with us now. So
just to be clear, City Relief used to be known as something else, right?
So it was New York City Relief, but also has been known as the Relief Bus. But now the name that we went under a name change, I think, right before I started a couple of years ago. But so it's City Relief now. Yeah.
And is that because it's broader than New York City, and they didn't want to restrict the branding to just one location, or is there other reasons? Or
no, yeah, that's the main thing, that it's not just. I mean, we are primarily in New York, but we also have outreach in Patterson that we do in New Jersey. We've been in Newark. We're kind of restructuring and figuring out what being in Newark is going to look like for us in the future. But then also being open to wherever the Lord is going to continue to take us. So,
got it.
So that it wasn't just this thought of we're only focused on New York, but even beyond where we're physically going, wanting to be able to even just impact people in other places to make a difference in the space.
Great. City Relief.
Well, we'll hear more about you guys in just a moment. We want to dive a little bit deeper into the ministry and what you do. Before we get there, why don't we talk a little bit about what's coming up in the life of the church, Pastor Dave? We'll do a quick roundup here on the life of the church. So, what's coming up in a month? Something's happening.
1 month is a big Easter weekend.
Easter.
Is that what we're talking about? What do you want to start with? I get thrown with there's no slides, man.
There's no slides. He's going to add them in later. So,
Tim, what's the first announcement?
There's Dave off over there.
Let's talk about Good Friday.
Good Friday. We're having an awesome Good Friday service, 7 o'clock, March 29th.
Messiah in the Passover.
Shalom. Mitch Glazier is going to be with us, explaining the connection between the Exodus and the events of Easter weekend. We'll enjoy a reflective time, celebrating the Lord's table. Join us for Good Friday.
I will say, though, Mitch has come here and done the Good Friday, the Messiah and the Passover before on a Sunday morning, so doing it on Good Friday, I think, will be pretty meaningful. And he does a great job.
That was a long time ago.
It was one of his long time.
I did not work here.
I know, but some people might remember that. There have been people here longer than you've worked here. So
that's true. Tim just raised his hand.
That would be me.
That's right.
Tim
was here in diapers.
When I was in, I think, middle school or maybe 5th grade when he came, and I was one of his volunteers. I sampled one of the parts of the Passover supper.
Oh, did you have
that
the bitter
might be
one?
the last time?
No, I had the good one. I had the one with the apples, the chutney.
Oh, you got the nice one. That's like the brick and the mortar and the bricks with no straw. That's what that was.
Yes.
Tim. We're going to have to get you on stage again,
I've been
man.
here. This is my 25th year at Millington
I'm
Baptist Church.
I'm going to tell Mitch, we have somebody who took the Passover back when he was young, and now he needs to be reinvigorated.
I'll go back up there.
We want Tim on
you remember
stage.
me?
Round 2.
I was a lot smaller.
Messiah and the Passover, Good Friday, 7 p.m. We're also going to have our hair-raising egg party. We had a debate about the amount of eggs in staff meeting today.
I missed a roaring debate, it sounds like.
We used to have 4,000 eggs.
Wow.
For the egg. We used to be an egg hunt, and we went away from that because it was too competitive. So now this is the what I call
it didn't bring out the best in the kids.
This is the trophy. Everybody gets a trophy egg party.
The flesh is present at Easter egg hunts. The competition, the pride, the bullying. You can get hurt.
It's true. It's true. Like I was telling them, kids elbowing. There was injuries. Kids. It's Is that what you want? Is that what you want for an outreach?
If we had an egg hunt when I was a kid here, I would have been a problem. I would have just been like bowling people over.
I could see that. I could see that. Get out of my way. Picking them up. All right. Anyway, that's going to be Saturday before Easter. That's going to be Saturday the 30th.
10 a.m., 9:30 for special needs.
It's going to be great. It's there will be some eggs. There will be lots of candy. There's going to be animals. Ponies.
We hope.
Well, maybe not ponies, but we'll see. There's going to be a petting zoo. Zoo.
Yeah.
Chicks.
So that's Saturday, and then of course Sunday, Resurrection Day, we are going to celebrate. And so mark your calendar.
Easter Sunday. You're like, yeah, well, and of course, Sunday.
Can you cut that part out, Tim? Next time, more feeling. Easter Sunday. He is risen. He is risen indeed.
That's right.
It's going to be great. Come worship with us. Invite a friend. It's going to be an impactful
listen,
year.
We are game. It's a month out. It's a month out from that. We're a little bit less than a month out from Christopher Yuan and the Underground. We got lots of things coming up.
Less than a month out for that one.
That's right. That's less. Sign up for that, by the way, Underground. And then we got a
Palm Sunday morning and Palm Sunday evening.
Yeah,
we got a Holy Week packed.
It is going to be a holy.
This is going to be awesome. We got Holy Sexuality that's kicking off Holy Week.
Yes,
it's going to be. March is going to be so much ministry going on here.
Who knows?
It's good.
If you want to show up here in March, and hopefully you'll say we'll have an annual business meeting too. So
there's going to be a business meeting.
We're going to take a break after March this year.
Well, I was giving you the business.
There you go. All right, so that's what's coming up in the life of the church. Let's move on from there. That was a rousing. Sidney, back to you. So let's talk a little bit about City Relief. So for those of you that are maybe if you're new with the podcast or new with Millington, we have a great emphasis on mission, both sharing the gospel locally and globally, showing and telling the gospel, and we support a lot of people that are sharing the gospel around the globe. But we also focus on several local partner ministries, and City Relief is one of them and has been so for many years. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just tell us a little bit more about City Relief, the mission, what you do, what your role is, and we might have some questions after you do that. So,
awesome. Yeah. So so at City Relief, we have basically looked at what our kind of focus is or what our goal is. And it's imagining a world where everyone has a place to call home, the support to thrive, and the opportunity to give back, right? And so primarily what we do is do mobile outreaches to people who are experiencing homelessness and poverty. And we make soup and we make drinks and we get donations of bread from some awesome bakeries. We get donations of socks from Bombas, which are amazing.
Wait, well, hold on. Bombas?
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
Oh, so Bombas is, they make socks.
I feel like I'm out of the know, right? That's like...
So they do socks, they do underwear, they do T-shirts.
Underwear?
Their business model is that for every one pair that you buy, they donate another pair.
Is this like Tom's? Like
Yeah,
shoes Tom's?
yeah.
Okay, similar. Okay.
So they are amazing socks. I have on a mismatched pair now.
Bombas. I gotta look them up now.
But yeah. So we get tons and tons of socks from them, and it's a huge need for people. It's one of the primary needs actually.
Because you're one of the people they donate to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll get boxes of those. We go out and then we set up our outreach area, which is setting up tables and chairs and putting up canopies, and we're serving food, but also giving people places to sit and just be a part of community and be a part of connection. And from there, as we're giving donations and we're doing prayer, we'll do what we call life care visits, where someone will sit with someone and say, well, what is it specifically that you're looking for help with? And so if it's getting off the street, if it's getting from one shelter into another, into a safe haven, if it's getting help with getting a voucher, if it's getting employment, legal services, medical services. Basically, we've been operating for 35 years now. Just had our 35th anniversary this past Tuesday. And so we've made a lot of connections in this space. And so we kind of play the middleman role of figuring out what someone needs and saying, hey, this might be the best route for you to go to get services there, and then walk alongside them in the process of that.
That's very cool.
So we again, that's the bulk of our typical outreach looks like that. And we have some other ways where we do outreach as well, but it's all kind of based around going to where people are and seeing how we can provide help and services to them.
Very cool. So back when I first came here, I did a lot of youth ministry, and I went out on New York City Relief quite a bit. I always remember you guys having great soup.
Yes.
Do you still have amazing soup, or has it gone down?
I've seen the big cauldrons.
I
still have
made
those
the soup.
Yes.
Soup and bread and lemonade
It's
and hot
like
chocolate.
a military operation in there.
It is. You feel like you're
to feed the hungry.
It is a very industrial situation. We, to the best of my knowledge,
it's a very industrial situation.
to the best of my knowledge, we have had the exact same recipe for all 35 of those years,
If it ain't broke, don't fix
That's
it.
right. Why would you change it?
I think it used to have beef broth, and so we took that out just so it can be vegetarian friendly. But
Oh,
aside
I
from
see.
that,
Okay.
so all the seasonings and everything, it's still the same, and it is incredibly delicious. I didn't have it until like 2 weeks after I started, and then when I finally had it, I was like, "What
That should
have I
have been
been
part
doing?"
of your
You're like,
application.
it's part of the
interview
calling.
process. Like,
You have to
Should've
try
been.
it.
they should give you like the Pepsi challenge. Just be like, which soup of this is better, and then based on that, they hire you or
Yeah.
not. You know.
Yeah, there's something special about the soup. People who don't even like soup enjoy the soup, and then the hot chocolate is also incredibly popular to the point when like it gets.
Yeah.
Obviously, we do it when it's cold. When it gets warm, people will still be like, "But do you have the hot chocolate?" I'm
In
like,
July, it's like 100.
It's like 100 degrees
I
out.
need some
but
piping hot chocolate.
I want that hot chocolate. So yeah, there's a special blessing that God's
What's
put over
awesome
the things
is,
we give out.
you know, you guys have these buses that are retrofitted
Yes.
into a mobile soup kitchen,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, so we get school buses. I tell people a lot of times it's the one thing that almost kept me from applying for the job, because they were like, "You're going to have to drive a bus through Midtown Manhattan." I was like, "Oh, I don't even drive my own car."
Something to
in the
pray
city.
about. Right.
But it worked out. But yeah, so we have these retrofitted school buses.
That is a lot to handle.
It is definitely in the
But they
tight
are
spaces,
awesome.
but they're amazing. And so we make it basically it looks like a big food truck. And so you come up to the window, which we have purposely lowered so that it's more eye level with people. Everything we do is about really trying to serve people with dignity.
So you're
and
not
respect.
up here on your perch looking down
Exactly,
on somebody.
exactly.
You're looking at them in the eye.
Yeah, and so you're able to just I've seen so many times where people are just blessed by the interaction they have at the window. You know, asking someone, do you want soup? Do you want bread? What kind of drink do you want? Because
awesome.
even that, like making sure people have choice,
Yeah.
is something that people don't often have when you're on the street, and kind of just like people are like, well, you're just kind of going to get whatever we have, and you know, you got to kind of just take it. We're
It's
like, no, but
dignity.
yeah. Yeah, it's a
You
huge.
choose.
It's a huge
We want
part.
to know what you want.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the buses are amazing. And even some of the other ways, even if we don't have a bus out, we'll do a street. We call it street kitchen. So we'll set up tables and bring the soup and put it on there. And so figuring out some different ways to be able to serve.
Cool. Now you guys have some things that are changing, right? You guys are new location for your base, and what else is going on? What updates can we know about City Relief?
Yeah. So we have been in Elizabeth, I think it was about 20 years. But the day of our 35th anniversary was also the last day we were in our Elizabeth base. And we dealt with was Ida a few years back and the floodwaters and all that happened. And so after that, we were kind of looking at, did it make sense to build back up in the space we were in, or if there was going to be another location that might be a little better for us for what we want to do in the future. And so we've been able to partner with the church in Clifton, where we are working on, actually in the process right now, of renovating some space that is going to be our new base of operations. We are temporarily out of Elizabeth. We're temporarily partnering with a church in North Halden, where we're doing some of our prep now while we're going through the process of the renovations that have to happen and getting the industrial kitchen,
the reno,
and all of that,
as they say in the business.
Yeah. So prayerfully, we are praying that we're able to be in there fully functioning as far as prep and some office space by June.
Cool.
But it's going to give us the ability to really grow. And so use it not just as a prep space, but also a place where people are able to come and prayerfully want to do trainings there. We want to do our podcast there, and really turn it into a mobilization center that is impacting not just the people who can come there physically, but even, like I said, people who are maybe not coming to serve directly with us, but are in different parts of the country will still be able to access some of the knowledge that we have. And we really want to be accessible to people.
It really seems like you guys have things down to a science in terms of how you do stuff. And I'm sure you're still growing and changing, but you really know what you're doing. By the way, the podcast, I just learned before we started the show here. What's it called?
Nobody Chooses Homelessness.
Nobody Chooses Homelessness.
Yeah. And
what's behind that? 'Cause I have some thoughts on that, but why did you guys choose that title?
One of the things we do, we have kind of 4 areas of focus about how we want to really make an impact as an organization. One of those areas is promoting empathetic narratives when it comes to homelessness and addressing some of the stigmas and the preconceived notions that people have.
Sounds like a good thing for a podcast.
Yeah. And so that idea of nobody chooses homelessness is that sometimes people can have the feeling that, someone chooses to be out here. Right. Or if you'll see somebody who's on the street and like, oh, well, you could just go into a shelter, but you choose to be out here. It's like, well, it's not simply that someone chose to be on the street. It's that they've oftentimes experienced some pretty damaging things in shelters and some pretty terrible experiences they've had. Right. And so it's not that this is what they want. It's just they literally have been so traumatized that they can't go back into these spaces. Right. And so it's just that concept of not viewing this as something that anyone would say, hey, this is actually what I want for my life. But viewing it as like no one's choosing this. And so if you think about it that way, it's, well, what are some of the circumstances that are putting people in a place where they're experiencing homelessness? So we bring people on who've been on the street. We've been people who bring people on who operate in the space and other nonprofits to speak into just, again, really having a wider understanding and a broader view of homelessness in general, and viewing the people in it versus just like viewing the problem and just viewing, they're a homeless person. No, it's a person who's experiencing homelessness, and what does that mean for how you view them and how you interact with them.
Yeah, that's good. I remember I went to seminary in Denver, and I don't know if you know, Denver had this auspicious goal of trying to end homelessness. Like literally there was these little meters in the city where you could, put money in that they were going to put into a fund to try and eradicate homelessness in the city. When I was there was still a lot of homeless people, and I still remember going to various soup kitchens and talking with people, and I was amazed, to your point, about people. You hear their story, and you wonder, where did they come from? And you thought, this woman was 5 years ago was one place, and now all of a sudden they're on the street, and you never would have thought that they would have been there. Yeah. So that's really cool that you're getting at the stories of that.
Yeah, it's there are a number of people I've talked to who were, business owners,
successful people, right?
Successful people, and one I remember one guy specifically. He, I think, owned a restaurant, and he just had one tragedy after another happen, and so basically all of his immediate family passed away. And so he was just reeling from all of that, and just, again, one bad thing after another, and he found himself on the street. And so it's not this thing of someone who was just like, it wasn't a reckless way he was living. It was just like he fell on hard times, and this is where he was. And so you find out, you realize how close a lot of us are to a lot of times people say a paycheck away from being in that experience ourselves.
There you go, or a couple experiences away.
Yeah.
Tim, did you go on that Washington D.C. mission trip we did back in the day?
I did go on that Washington.
So
DC
I remember.
mission
Did you
trip
go to
back
the
in
soup
day.
kitchen with me there? Were you on my team that day? There was There was one or two soup kitchens that I went to, and I remember having this long conversation with a guy about this very topic. That he was some kind of successful stuff, and you never would have guessed that he'd be sitting there at a soup kitchen on a.
I don't
whatever
know if
morning it was.
I don't know if I went to the soup kitchen. I don't think I went to a different group where it was more of like like for clothing that they would come. It was a center where they would come and they would change in the clothes that they were wearing, and they would pick out something else so the clothes they could have clean clothes for the week or for the day or something like that. I don't think I went to the soup kitchen.
All right. Well, my favorite story from that trip, my wife still brings up to this day, was Corey. I don't know because we would go out and we would interact with homeless folks. I don't know if she was on his team, but we went out and we found we were finding people to minister to, and Corey went up to this one guy one time and just said, "Hey, how you doing? Do you want to know God?" Were you with him that time? Does that sound familiar?
No, it's funnily enough. Knowing Corey now, that's still something he'd probably.
Well, he wants to be a pastor now. So anyway, that was all from
I wasn't in that group.
inner city mission trips that we did. I did back in the day with youth groups. So
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing, man. That's great.
Absolutely.
We're glad you're here today.
Happy to be on.
And any other thing you want to mention about City Relief before we move on? How can people be involved? How can we support you?
Yeah.
I mean, we as a church support you, but if an individual was interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our website, cityrelief.org, is a great place to start. When you write on the first page, you can sign up to be a part of our newsletter. And so our CEO, Josiah, he sends out a newsletter every Friday, and it has updates about City Relief, but then also updates just about homelessness in general and kind of what's going on. And then also
it's an attractive website right here.
Yeah.
You're hiring too. You could work
We are. Yes. So we are hiring.
Yeah.
We have a few different positions that we're trying to expand. We have, I think last year, we served about.
And you guys are on
60,
TikTok.
Yeah. So
see.
TikTok, Instagram, our communication team.
That's where all the youngins are.
But yeah, we served about 60,000 people all told last year on a staff of 27 or so. And that's not even all frontline. So we are definitely needing to expand the team. The need is growing. We are the level of homelessness right now is higher than it has been since since the Great Depression. And even I was saying earlier, I saw this article that 1 in 4 children in New York City are living in poverty. And so poverty is this thing that frequently precedes homelessness. And so the need is huge. And so we're trying to do our best to be a part of the response. So so follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, sign up for our newsletter. You can, and then even cityrelief.org/volunteer. You can see how you can actually come out and be a part of the different outreaches that we do and really get involved. So.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing. We'll come back to your sermon here in a few minutes, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of City Relief, how you can be involved, what's involved, and how God's working there. So, you want to make any comments, Pastor Dave, or are you good over there?
It's a privilege to partner with you, and so just thank you.
By the way, you're looking very sharp today.
Yeah,
I forgot to comment on your attire before.
I was officiating at a funeral this morning, so I didn't get a chance to do a wardrobe change before the Behind the Pulpit podcast. So here I am, and glad to be with you. But thank you to Millington Baptist Church. We are partnering with City Relief. It's because of your generous giving that we can partner with them, and you're making a difference. 60,000 people served last year. Yeah. Because of you, that kind of ministry is able to happen. So you get to be a part of that, and you can do that even more so by checking out their website and finding out how you can get involved.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Well, Pastor Dave, it's that time.
It is.
Of the podcast.
The great Appomattox Courthouse piece has been extended.
By the way,
no justice, no peace. There's going to be no peace until Pastor Bob relents on the.
Well, okay. So
war.
Yesterday I was in my helping to lead the Contagious Faith class that we're doing on sharing your faith, and Dave happened to see that I was carrying over a.
Oh my gosh! I got to talk about this. So I'm like sneaking out to say hello to Sidney yesterday, and Bob's got to go teach his class. The dude had a stack like a cartoon that just got out of the library, like a bibliophile. Like this guy had 10 books. I mean, if anybody was in Bob's class yesterday, how many books did he recommend in your class, man? He was like, his arms were hurting.
Because of time, I only recommended I think 2.
Because of time. Well, next
because of
week.
time. Well, I was giving
There's
a
more.
menu of
But wait.
There's more.
We were talking about the reason-giving style for the faith, and part of that is that, hey, if you're a reason-giving style person, you want to go research and understand things. So that's why I brought examples
So it
of
was a
books.
great
If
book
you want to
day.
go deeper, it was a good book day.
Just when I thought the conflict was dying down, it starts
Well, and
back
then,
up.
but then I will tell you, Delia Kang, who I think we got them on the podcast here coming up soon, gave a shout out for Behind the Pulpit because we try to do our best to answer some questions that come up, to give reasons for the faith, and so she was plugging the podcast.
Nice.
So, yeah. By the way, she came on back in the summertime when you were on sabbatical, and that was one of our highest viewed episodes. So we're gonna have to bring her back because she's a influencer. I've seen her wear the shirt that says influencer. So
Delia's where it's at.
yeah, there it's at.
Look forward to you being back
Awesome.
on, Delia. And Stan. Let's get Stan on, too.
That's right. Good idea. Hey, by the way, though, it was your week to recommend a book, and I heard you forgot.
Forgot.
So-
So, sorry, guys. You're probably going to get not just one, but a few.
I wonder who could recommend a book for us since Dave
I
forgot.
wonder if there's anybody who could stand in as the designated hitter. Bob, have you read anything
Do you have a
good
book you want to
lately?
recommend, Sidney? What's the best book you read recently?
The best book I read.
You could
recently.
recommend Josiah's book.
I could. Josiah's book is amazing. I'm currently reading a compilation of Tozer, actually.
Ah,
Tozer.
good. Which
Yeah.
ones?
So it's
Knowledge of the Holy.
Yeah, so I've read that before. So I was I'm in The Purpose of Man now, and I read what's the Pursuit of
God?
Pursuit of God. Yeah, so Pursuit of God, The Purpose of Man, and then the last one is the Crucified Life.
Right.
So that's
Well, historically,
See,
A.W.
even
Tozer.
Sydney tucked 3 into 1.
There you go.
He's been hanging out with Bob.
it's all one book. It's
okay.
one,
No, it's not, Sydney. It's 3 books. Look in the page at the beginning. It'll tell you there's 3 different dates. Everything's 3, man. Just because it's in one cover, that doesn't.
Well, I
Tim,
do.
I don't know what to do, Tim. This is a losing battle, man. I can't do it.
These
Sydney's like, I got a
So-
book.
our poor listeners'
do-
Amazon budget is going to be down.
Have mercy.
It's like how was your
I
day at
do,
work? I need to buy 4 more books this week.
I will step up to the plate, Dave. I do have 2 books here to recommend, but they're going to go along with our In the News segment. So let's move on to In the News. All right, so it's been a interesting news week this week, if you've been paying attention. There's several stories to mention. The first one we're going to talk about is this Alabama Supreme Court case that happened just the last week. And basically, they said that it's related to IVF. If your embryo is frozen, it is considered a person. And so there was a couple that was suing this infertility clinic down there for basically freezing their embryos and then discarding them. Am I getting that right?
So the background of the story, and I was pretty shocked about this one this week. I texted you. So there was a couple that had embryos frozen at this particular clinic, and somebody went in the back who shouldn't have been in the back and was wandering around where they shouldn't have been wandering around.
What?
Knocked over something.
I missed this part of the story.
Yeah, and some embryos were destroyed. So if you come from the Christian worldview, you believe that this is life. And the couple then proceeded to sue the infertility clinic and there was no laws on the books to really speak to this issue. We don't have laws about what is justice for those who are frozen embryos. So they used laws related to persons. And so they began to legislate against this infertility clinic using the language of homicide. And so because of that, the infertility clinic shut down all their IVF program. And then a couple other infertility clinics in Alabama followed suit, shut down their programs. And now the entire state of Alabama is kind of like in an uproar going, how do we handle this? Who's liable if mistakes do happen in the context of a frozen embryo? And so it's become a really, really interesting dialogue in the culture right now. So
Some
is
people
this
are
a
upset.
human life? Does it
Some
deserve
people are
protection? Along
losing
with,
their minds. Some people are, happy that this happened. So it's a big discussion. You're right.
Yeah. So I think there's some conflicting laws on the books about this situation that need to be more consistent, right? So it's kind of like the double homicide laws. So like you have someone who's liable of of homicide if they were to injure a pregnant person and cause the loss of life there. But yet, in another context, if there's an abortion, then that human being would not have the same protections in that case.
Yeah.
So there seems to be an inconsistency there, and there seems to be an inconsistency on the laws regarding frozen embryos in Alabama. So people are
Right.
talking about it.
Right.
Of course, from a Christian worldview, we would say this is life, this is worthy of protection, and we would hope that the laws would align with that. The great irony of this story, I think, is that the couple left their embryos frozen, and they're suing the clinic for, in a sense, mistreating these embryos. And I would argue, well, by you leaving them frozen somewhere for someone else to care for them, you're also not treating them with proper dignity too, right? So
Right.
I think there's a couple different perspectives to this story. We'll see how it turns out, but it certainly was a big headline in my news feed this week.
Well, why don't we talk for a second about IVF, which is known as in vitro fertilization, and that is basically couples come to that, I think, because they might have an infertility issue and they're looking for a way to still have a child. And a lot of Christians go and engage in the practice without thinking, I think, on the wider realm as it relates to the life issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the typical practice of IVF, and a lot of clinics won't do this unless you specifically follow their standards, which would be that you're going to try to fertilize as many eggs as you possibly can, and then they'll screen out the ones that are the most viable, and then they'll implant those, and then the ones that were fertilized but were not chosen are either frozen or, in some cases, discarded. Well, you see where that becomes a problem if you think that embryo is life. What do you do with that? So a lot of people don't understand how that generally works. There are situations where you can go in and just say, I'm gonna fertilize one at a time and implant them one at a time. Some clinics won't do that because it winds up costing a lot of money. So there's some economics involved in this. Here is where my book recommendation comes in, Pastor Dave.
Here we go. I bet you got a book for this.
So there is a woman named Stephanie Gray Connors, and she wrote a book called Conceived by Science. By the way, I had these out for about a year and a half ago. We had a woman named Katie Faust come, and we did an underground on children's rights, and this is kind of related to that. So Noah put together a really good short where we talked about reproductive technologies. So maybe, Tim, we can link that in the show notes there if you want to go watch that clip that
Well done.
I interacted with her. This book is really good, kind of laying out the issues. She does come from a Catholic perspective. So Catholics have certain theological convictions that we don't, that inform this. So you may or may not agree with everything she says in here, but it is a good, helpful tool in terms of thinking about how do we process this. The subtitle is Thinking Carefully and Compassionately About Infertility and IVF. So that's that. She also has another really good book on abortion called Love Unleashes Life. And the subtitle is Abortion and the Art of Communicating Truth, because it is a very sensitive topic to talk about. How do you bring this up? How do you have good conversations? How are you sensitive to people's desires and needs? And anyway, she does a great job of laying out the arguments there. So check those out. Check out the clip. Hopefully that'll help you process through the IVF discussion.
One more acronym. So sometimes what's
you're going to bring it out.
helpful-
You'll be the acronym guy today.
Okay, so if a life is not able to survive outside the womb, theologians use something called the SLED test, S-L-E-D. So the only difference between an embryo and a baby outside the womb is a matter of these four characteristics. So SLED stands for size, level of development, environment, and degrees of dependency, which all vary, but it's still a human being with human DNA and worthy of protection, made in the image of God. And I think we should be careful about our legislation to protect life, no matter the size, no matter the level of dependency. Those issues are just, there's a spectrum on each of those. So
Good.
Hopefully that's helpful. Interesting news story.
So anyway, that's up in the news. Do we want to mention the two other ones briefly?
Sure.
You had forwarded me to one about how hostility towards the faith is kicking up, right?
Yep, I read a news
Family
story this
Research
week.
Council.
The headline is Hostility Against Churches is on the Rise in the United States. Over the past several years, we've been tracking acts of hostility against churches between 2018 and 2023. At least
Joel Osteen's church just got attacked, right?
That's true.
That was
At least
in the news recently.
At least 915 acts of hostility in that year span. This is like vandalism, arson. It could be gun-related incidents. I think that was the one at Joel Osteen's thing, bomb threats, that kind of thing. But in 2023, there was 436 incidents, which was more than double in the year before, 2022. So that's a lot of acts of hostility against churches that are destructive and have the potential to really intimidate the religious community, which I thought was worthy of mentioning in the news. Of course, we would make a couple comments about that. I don't know, Pastor Bob, what would you say about that news story from a Christian worldview? How do we come at that angle?
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously troublesome, but I think part of the issue that we have to understand when we think about the hostility of the culture towards us is that Jesus himself predicted this. So in John chapter 15, Jesus talks about how the world is going to hate us because it hated him first. And so we shouldn't be surprised that there's going to be hostility, that there's going to be suffering. If you read 1st and 2nd Peter, that's a major theme in his letters as well, writing to a church that's in exile, culturally speaking. So these are things that we should expect. And I think there is a call to persevere in the midst of that. Along those ways, though, since we're a Baptist church, Baptists are very heavy on religious liberty, and we do think that's something that we should advocate for, that you should be able to practice your religion in a way that's, we live in a pluralistic society, so, we're going to defend the rights of, the Muslims to have the mosques and the Jews to have their synagogues. Well, we should also have the right to have churches and be protected.
Right. So Baptists typically hold to soul freedom, which means God gives each individual the choice to participate, not participate, accept, reject him. And because of the Bill of Rights, America is a culture where the religious liberty principle thrives. And we think the Spirit of God will win people over because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Right.
But we would want to extend that freedom, not just for Christian worship, but for other faiths as well. That's a value I think we should uphold in our culture. Mm-hmm. So acts of hostility against religious institutions, I don't think can be very fruitful or profitable. That's not the way to engage in healthy debate. So Let's have a conversation. Let's talk it out, but let's also uphold freedom.
Good. I got a couple good books I can recommend on that, but I'll refrain.
Oh, my goodness.
On this subject.
I wasn't even expecting that. It's just like sometimes he surprises me.
There you go.
There he is.
All right. Last thing I want to mention that was in the news this week was Google Gemini. Tim, did you hear about Google Gemini?
I did not.
You did not?
Can you enlighten
me, please? Oh my gosh. It is an AI-based image tool that got a lot of play in the news this week because people were putting in things and it was giving them historically inaccurate images. So from Reuters, it says Google plans to relaunch its AI tool that creates images of people, which it paused last week after inaccuracies in certain historical depictions. So the reason I'm bringing this up
Do you have an example of this? Like, did you type in
I didn't type in anything.
And have it pop out an image that was inaccurate? Or
I think people were putting in things like, show me a pope, and it gave images of people that were never popes or something like that. So anyway, the reason
disinformation.
I guess. Well, it was more about who was putting in the parameters for what the searches were going to be. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think AI, and we've been talking a lot about that recently, is that it can be a really good tool, but if it can also be used to target certain people. So I think I was thinking along with this hostility towards the church, there could be an AI system or an algorithm that's put out there that could start targeting Christians or limiting the spread of the gospel to some extent. So I would keep an eye on this. That was just something that was popping up on all people's news feeds and lots of discussion about that this week. So that was another thing that's going on in the news.
What's the thing
AI
called?
is constantly evolving.
What's it called when AI is wrong? Like when it gets a fact incorrect. There's a name for that. I can't remember what it is, but like you type in a question and it answers you, and then you're like, no, that's not it. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, it was this. It has there's a word for that. I can't remember what it is.
I don't know what the word is, but I do know that some of the AI algorithms that are out there are not. Tim can go look it up. It's not
sure.
All right,
a lot of the search
error?
engines like ChatGPT are looking for patterns. So if you're asking a question that doesn't have a recognizable pattern, a lot of times it will get the answer incorrect. And there's a number of math problems. Like 2 + 2 from a math perspective is a pattern that's recognized. But if you type in 173 3/4 times 25,000 and 3/8,
would you like me to?
It's probably not going to give you the right
now?
answer. Yeah.
What was the question? What was the math problem?
I don't even remember.
All right, never mind.
If you give it a really complicated, non-recognizable math problem, it's a lot of times will not get it right. I've heard a lot of people talk about that.
Interesting.
It's looking for patterns. It's not actually doing the math, basically. All right. Okay, so anyway, those are the news stories. That's what's going on. Check them out. We'll link down to our underground video in the show notes. All right, next segment. Questions. Was there any questions that came in this week, Tim, or are we getting a reprieve this week?
We did not receive any questions.
No questions.
I thought my brother was going to submit one because my brother was really impacted by your sermon yesterday, Sidney. And I was like, ask a question, and he didn't do it. So shame on you, Ben.
Oh, good.
I'll have him
calling
submit
him out.
I'll have him submit it to your podcast.
Well, since there are no questions, we will move on to the sermon recap. And
I got the word.
lo and behold, what's the word?
Hallucinations.
The AI
Excuse
is
me?
hallucinating.
Really?
Yeah. That's what they call it. When it's wrong.
That sounds
it's called
made
a
up.
So
hallucination.
ChatGPT can have.
You're hallucinating. When AI gets something wrong, it's called a hallucination.
It hallucinates.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're right. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Defining your terms. That's the thing you need to do in 2024. Define those terms.
Mm.
All right. So sermon, Luke chapter 10, 25 to 37, well known as the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Okay, here's what we do. Ready? In 60 seconds,
Summarize the whole thing.
your whole sermon. What was that passage talking about?
Well,
What's the
he
main
told me
point?
yesterday that brevity is not his strong suit.
Well,
So
this is the key,
we'll,
man.
we'll give
60
you
seconds.
90 seconds. 90 seconds.
Give us an overview.
Okay, yeah. So you see Jesus telling this parable to someone who's asking, who is my neighbor? And he gives these three examples of people who encounter someone who's been beaten up on the side of the road, two people who it seems like would know that they should help because they are a priest and a Levite and are spending time serving the Lord, and this one guy who, for everybody in the Jewish culture, would have thought would be the least likely to be the hero of the story, but he is the one, the Samaritan, who stops and engages with the person who's been beaten up and takes care of him, takes him to the inn, and makes sure he's cared for. And Jesus asked the lawyer which one of these was a neighbor to him, essentially, which one of these was a neighbor, and he says, the one who showed mercy. So he says, go and do the same. And so what I realized a lot of times reading coming to the story is that I would put the priest and the Levite kind of in this box and just think of them as just like these villainous characters. But when I realized and I thought through what was happening with the lawyer and the fact that he was trying to justify himself in asking this question, who is my neighbor, I had to think through, well, what would it look like for me to try to justify myself? And so I saw some questions that I think that the priest or the Levite might ask of coming upon a situation like this that are legitimate questions, that are rational questions, that make sense, but that led them, I believe, in this parable to then make choices that did not actually honor God. And so God calls us to be a people who are going and showing mercy to those who are beaten up and kind of left on the side of the road of life and who have fallen into the hand of the robber and the one who's come to steal, kill, and destroy. And so we have to be honest with ourselves about if we are making excuses, honestly, for why we can kind of justify not engaging with people, and understanding that as we're honest with ourselves and present that to the Lord, he's the one who's going to kind of change our hearts and lead us to be the type of people who go and do the same and show mercy the same way our Father shows mercy to the just and the unjust. And it doesn't matter kind of how they got in that situation, but what matters is who he's created us to be.
Well, it would be really
Good
cool
summary.
if somebody started an organization
Put you on
that
the
tried
spot
to
there.
live that out specifically with people that are on the street.
There was only someone with a vision and staff.
If there was someone who wanted to bring like some type of relief to the city,
To the city.
it would be great.
You know, one thing I think is often missed about the story is the fact that you had the priest coming up from Jericho, which is where the priests live, and they would have to travel up to Jerusalem to the temple. Like that was something they did regularly. So this was not a uncommon practice for them to do. Hey, so I heard before that you took like 5 pages of notes. So that makes me think you might have a couple questions for Sidney.
I wrote
also
down all
took a
3 of
ton
his
of notes.
questions from the first section, 2 of his questions from the third section.
What if we ask him the questions back to him?
Well, you probably could have had more questions, right? You probably had to limit yourself.
Yes,
but those
for
are
sure.
some good ones. What I appreciated was the context issue. I don't think I've ever thought that thought before, how you started the sermon by reminding us what happened earlier in Luke chapter 10 and the whole idea of the harvest. And then the end of the story is go. And there's still this kind of sending, going. There's this mission thing. There's this harvest theme. I don't know that I've ever seen that contextually before. Is that something that you were just inspired to notice in your current study? Had you noticed that a long time ago, or
No, yeah, that was new. That was pretty much everything I shared was like, it was a new, because again, my typical, even honestly, so I set the questions for like the sermon.
good questions, by the way.
But if you notice, I put the Pharisee and the Levite. I didn't put the priest and the Levite because for some reason that was kind of baked in my head. And it wasn't honestly until yesterday morning I was like, oh, wait, no, it's priest. But I was even coming to the scripture with this, I know what it says.
Right.
And so I kind of just go through it rather than taking the time to really, every time you're engaging with the scripture, allowing yourself and allowing God to lead you in what it's saying in that moment. So what I was getting now was new for me because I kind of would approach it like, oh, yeah, I know the story of the Good Samaritan. But seeing that context was a new thing for me.
That's good. Interestingly,
I heard a funny story about Sinclair Ferguson. He had to preach on the Good Samaritan one time, and he prepared a sermon on the prodigal son on accident. And then he realized when he got up to preach that he had to preach a sermon on the Good Samaritan. And he tried to preach his best stuff on the Good Samaritan on the fly, but he got them confused in the middle of his preaching. You're talking about preconceived notions. Like he was talking about how like the prodigal son, went to a far country and then got beat up on the side of the road. Like he got it all garbled up, So we bring these other, things in our mind to the text, and then that's not even there. That was not a Pharisee. It was a priest. We got to be careful about what we're bringing to the text.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's there. We don't know if it's there until we see it. So it's good. It's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. So what's interesting is I've been doing some study for my passage this week, which is Luke, the one that follows, Luke 10:38 to 11:13, which also has two famous stories, the story of Mary and Martha, and then Jesus and the Lord's Prayer, which is a little different than Matthew. But some people will actually group verse 25 all the way to verse 13. And try to tie them together. And I haven't gotten deep enough in the study as to understand why some people do that versus make a break. But the Mary and Martha thing is really about how do I not get so caught up in my busyness and my anxieties, but really stay and focus on Christ. And the similar focus when it comes to the prayer. We need to be seeking the Lord, ask, seek, knock. So perhaps it is that the people that were passing over the person that was injured were not actually seeking the Lord. They were thinking about themselves. Maybe that's why they're connected. I just thought of that.
Yeah, there's I think tendency we can have to be you can change your heart's your heart can be changed, or you can just kind of change your heart's direction, and it's not exactly the same. And so I think sometimes we have this ability to be, I can be self-centered in some or very focused on me in some practical ways, but I can also kind of take that same thing and then just kind of make it scriptural and make it spiritual, and it's still really about me. I'm still kind of self-centered on me, but now I've put like a kind of a God veneer over it. And so like the concept of I'm on the way to church, or I'm on the way to do this, or I'm trying to with Martha, I'm trying to serve and make sure everything's kind of put together with the way it needs to be, but Jesus, like you're still missing the thing that I'm calling you to focus on in this moment. And so I think there is this similar thing of like, again, you have the priest and the Levite. I don't know what they might have been on the way to do, but I'm sure it was like they believe they're living lives that are serving the Lord. But it's like, are you going to be open to the moment to moment times and callings of God, saying, here's what serving me looks like right now, and it's going to take you not actually looking at what works best for you and what fits for you, but what I actually want you to do.
In that moment, instead of making a judgment about why the person's beat up on the side of the road, maybe a best posture would be like more curious. I just wonder, what's going on here? What happened?
Yeah. I think we can ask questions that we just assume we already have answers to, and so we don't come to it with that kind of curious space of, because if you're curious, you're gonna lean into it. Your question is going to kind of create more questions, versus if I feel like I know the answer, I'm kind of asking this question just to, again, just justify kind of going on my own way. So.
I had a question for him. So how do we prevent misunderstanding Jesus's parable? The guy comes and asks about eternal life. So how do we prevent the misunderstanding that what Jesus is teaching there is that it's our good works, it's our care for the poor, it's our going out with City Relief, it's our being like the Good Samaritan, it's our going and doing likewise that makes us right with God? How do we prevent the misunderstanding that that's what Jesus was teaching? He was teaching you have to you got to do this. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to follow me and just kind of do better.
Yeah.
How do we prevent that misunderstanding?
I think it's two ways. One, when you come to Scripture, looking at context, right? And so from when I read it and I see the focus of harvest, and I see that this lawyer was trying to justify himself and seemed to have no problem, again, with the idea of loving God with all my heart, all my soul, all my
Got
strength.
that.
Right?
Next question.
So it's cool.
I just love God perfectly every day and never mess up. What else you got?
So in his mind, at least, he thinks he's good there.
Give me a challenge.
Right. And so it's the loving the neighbor part that was the issue for him. And so you see Jesus, I believe, addressing that because that's the problematic thing for him. And so I think it's knowing that it's not that Jesus is saying, hey, if you do this, everything is perfect. And it's like, here's where I need to bring your attention to. But also in bringing your attention to it, what that should do for all of us, right? I think the lawyer in that moment felt the conviction of Scripture, and his response to the conviction was, I got to justify myself. When I think the response that Jesus calls us to is, I have to let you justify me. I'm not the one who's going to be able to do it. And so as you expose these things that are kind of in my heart and in my life, it's not, I have the ability to just kind of flip the switch and I can make the changes that I need to make myself. These are opportunities that Jesus is inviting us into to understand this is why you need to give yourself to me. This is why you need me as your Lord and your Savior. I'm the one who's going to cover these. I'm the one who's going to bring the grace to bring change and transformation. But you just have to be honest about what needs to change. And so I think, it can go a different route if you think, this just means if I can just kind of flip the switch, I'll do it. And it's like, that's all of Scripture really points to the fact that it doesn't work. Like he just kind of gave the law, and you had the Israelites, and it was like, do these things. And Moses even says very clearly, like, this thing isn't far from your grasp. It's not high in the heavens that you got to go and reach it. But even with these practical things that God gave them, they weren't able to walk it out. They needed him, and we need him to be our Savior and to be the one who's causing the transformation in us. And so there are opportunities to engage with the reality of that, not to try to just say, okay, cool, I'll fix it myself, and if I just do good, I'm covered. It's like, no one's good. Like that's the point. It exposes the fact that we aren't as good as we think we are.
Right. And I just want to point out the beauty of your closing prayer in, I think, both services, that you really tucked the gospel into the ending and said, Christ is the one who didn't pass us by, who actually poured the oil of his Spirit upon us, who gave us the new wine of the new covenant for us to drink, and did not allow us to be, beaten on the side of the road. But he's the ultimate Good Samaritan who has first loved us, and now, understanding in our place of desperation, he has met our need. Now we want to go and do likewise. It was tucked in the prayer. I don't want anybody to miss it, though, because it was really good, and sometimes, like, we don't always catch every word, but that was well said. Beautiful wrap-up of the sermon. And then that song you chose at the end,
that was,
You had chose it, right?
Yeah, but I randomly heard it 2 weeks ago, and I was like,
so you just came across it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's
And I asked,
quite literally.
I said, do you want a closing song? And he said, yeah. Well, how about this one?
Yeah.
And John pulled it off. John's like, all right. John says, John can do anything. You just give him something.
Perfect closing song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that song moved from my desperation to the calling as well. There was a similar, 2 parts to the song.
Right.
So it was great.
And it's it's exactly the love God, love your neighbor. You get into the space where the reason that we love God, Scripture's clear. It's not that we loved him first, right? But he loved us first, and because of that, we respond to him with this love. And as we're changed, we can't help but go and show that same love to the people.
Well, it's
around
cool
us.
that the service itself was wedded with that, as well as we had several baptisms yesterday too, which
beautiful.
is a picture of what God is doing in people's lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
cool. Very good service.
Special service yesterday.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in the sermon you want to mention?
I think that was it. Yeah, I think just hitting on that I appreciate you emphasizing that point of it not being our own works. Even I've thought in times about James saying, faith without works is dead. And sometimes my focus has been, okay, well, that means I have to do more works. And it's like, actually, what I might need to bring my attention to is my faith and the quality of the faith that I have. And so, but it's bringing it back to Jesus, what am I allowing you to do in me? Not what can I just kind of do myself? Because I can't do it myself. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. Good word.
All right, Tim, we're here.
Is it my turn? Is it my time to shine?
We're out of breath. Well, it's time to sprint.
It is time to sprint.
We're at the Theology Sprint
I'm
section.
trying to decide if I want to
You can
create a sprint for my notes or if I want to create.
Sydney's
a
got
sprint
Yeah,
Jordans.
or-
I'm just saying.
He's ready to jump. This will be the Theology
I
jump
was,
today.
I was going to direct it.
If you got one
That's
for
Sydney.
him, maybe he can try to take
I will
a
say,
crack today.
Before I get to the sprint, I just loved at the end those two like big points that you said, where you talk about it's
Look,
not.
Tim's got his journal notes
Look,
out
I
there,
got
man.
that.
I got
Journaling.
all these notes,
My
man.
goodness.
I wanted to put some input
See
in
that?
here.
Let the Lord bless you with
praise
that.
God.
Those two things at the end that you said, it's not who is my neighbor, it's what kind of neighbor are you. And then when you said, like when you talked about how a lot of times we don't see the people that are in need because we structure our life not to see them, and how Jesus sends us out, not just be comfortable.
Yeah.
I thought that was really powerful and really struck me. And I know, like for me, I don't really see a lot of people. It's because sort of I'm not around them because I'm not going out and seeking people in need. So that really resonated with me well.
Praise God.
Is there a Gen Z word for that?
A Gen Z word for what?
Like it was like that was a lit point or whatever your
This is drop the mic, isn't it?
whatever your Gen Z word is for it. It was dope. I
Yeah, it
don't
was. I'm trying to.
Make it into a meme.
A
was
couple
fine.
episodes ago, he literally got up here and read the Gen Z Bible about Mary getting pregnant.
No, I think someone would say in Gen Z, that point was fire, like for real.
Oh, fire! There we
Yeah,
go.
no
See?
cap.
The flames.
I don't know why it took you that long to come up
The
with that.
emojis.
I don't speak like a normal Gen Z person.
Are you really a Gen? I don't even know if I believed it.
I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't use their language, their jargon. I don't claim them. Anyway,
All right, what's the
Time for the
question?
sprint. Sorry
What's
for
the,
the
what's the
delay.
sprint
Marches to the
here?
beat of a different drummer.
let's. Okay. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, it emphasizes compassion for those in need, regardless of their background. How do you reconcile this teaching with the ongoing challenge of homelessness? And what specific actions do you believe the church should take to address this issue beyond traditional charity efforts?
Oh my goodness, that sounds like it was tailor made for you right there.
It's almost like I tailor-made it for Sidney.
Like they knew I'd be here.
Was that from ChatGPT or did you come up with that?
I'm
Gemini.
going to use my fifth
Gemini.
amendment, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the gospel, right, and you understand what Jesus has always been doing throughout the New Testament, throughout Scripture, even before, even the Old Testament, with God telling Abraham that he was going to be a blessing to many nations. Everything about what God has done has been about taking people outside of just their immediate context and connecting with people who were different than them. Right. And so if I understand that as something that has always been kind of at the heart of Christianity and also just at the heart of God throughout history, then I first come to it with understanding that part of being a Christian, I think, is stepping outside of our boxes, stepping outside of the places that we're used to being and connecting with the people that we're used to connecting with, and making that an intentional part of our lives. And viewing people, it's again one of the things we often say, right? If you are able to view a person as a person, and not so much as the thing, the experience that they're having, right? So if I'm able to view a person experiencing homelessness versus a homeless person, and the wording isn't super important, but it's about how you engage with people. Do I engage with you through the filter of the situation you're in or what you're going through, or do I engage with you as a fellow image bearer of God who's going through this experience? When you do that, you kind of begin to level the playing field, and connecting with people is a little easier. And so even though they might be somebody who's different than you, on a different path than you, and have different culture, different background, whatever, going out and making that connection doesn't seem as hard because you are, again, viewing them as a person first. I think that a big part of what God calls us to do, I was talking recently about the difference between pity and empathy. And so when someone just feels pity, they might say, oh, I feel really bad for you in the situation that you're in. And is there anything I can do to fix the situation? It's very situation focused, but it can lose sight of the person, right? Where empathy is, even if, like I spoke to this yesterday, even if I can't necessarily fix your situation, I'm willing to walk with you through it. And so I thought about Jesus telling Zacchaeus, come down. I've got to come eat with you. Like, I've got to come eat at your house today. And I'm like, Jesus didn't have to go eat there. Like, he didn't need to. You could multiply fish and bread, and you could, right? But saying I'm going to come eat with you, put you in this space where I'm going to be in a space of exchange and of empathy and being with you. And so I think one of the things that the church can do beyond, I guess what you say, like traditional kind of charity, is creating spaces and creating times and looking at how can we walk alongside people, even where they are, right? Like obviously we invite people to the church and to the building, but how are we able to bring church to where people are and kind of see needs that need to be met? Yes. But one of the beautiful things I think about City Relief is that we have this space where people can sit and have conversations and get to know each other and have shared experiences. And I can gain wisdom from somebody who's I'll say a lot of times I'll sit with someone that I think I'm going to try to help figure out what I need to do for them and how I can get them off the street and all these different things. And I'll be so blessed by the conversation and so blessed by the wisdom they have. And sometimes, a lot of times, blessed by the faith that they're actually still carrying. I'm like, I actually want you to pray for me, right? Because I'm hearing what God is doing in you and how even in this struggle that you're having and the situation you're experiencing, you've still been able to hold on to your belief in Christ and the belief that he's caring for you. And so I'm blessed by that. And so I think as the church, if we can go into spaces where we are willing to just engage people as people, willing to just be empathetic and compassionate and walk alongside people, and be willing to not always treat people as if they are a problem to solve, but a person to walk through life with and a person to get to know and even a person to learn from. I think that one actually has a big effect on solving the problems, because the trust and the relationships that we're able to build through that so often make people much more able to accept some of the guidance and the direction you want to give them. But it also has a huge impact on us. And so,
Cool.
James says, do you not know that God has chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith and inherit the kingdom? And so I think there's some things that God even wants to do in his church and give to his church that comes through being in these places of service and connecting with people who are kind of on the margins. So
Great.
I was reminded this past week that hospitality in the Bible, the New Testament term for hospitality, was not like having your friends over for dinner. Hospitality is specifically a term that's fellowship. Hospitality is a term where you actually entertain those who are different, those who are not like you, those who may not share your faith, those who may be different from you. And hospitality is something that we're called to do, exercising hospitality. And that's good for them, but it's also good for us. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something about your bio?
Yeah.
Because I forgot to ask you about this. So instead of the word homeless in your bio, I remember when I was introducing you, you used the term unhoused community. So I assume that was an intentional choice of words there. How do you draw what made you decide to word it in the way that you worded it?
So we are very, I think, formed by the words we use and the language we use, right? And so whether you're saying someone is, a lot of times we'll say friends on the street, we'll say someone who's unhoused, we'll say someone who's experiencing homelessness. Even Josiah's book, Neighbors Without Doors, right? And so we'll use this kind of language, not because it necessarily is saying someone's homeless is a problem. It's just that if I talk to the average person and I say, hey, yeah, so I connected with a homeless person, yesterday, there's usually a bunch of things that kind of come to their mind and connections they make about what that looked like, what that experience was like, that frequently just isn't accurate, right? But it's based on some preconceived notions of some things that have been pulled from whether it's media or different places. And so being intentional with language is a attempt to have us kind of rethink how we view somebody, right? And so again, the person who's on the street is not really I had a couple people who will say this, it's not really, they're not bothered by, you call them homeless person, unhoused, whatever. They are mindful and concerned about how you actually treat them. And so we think that when you're using language that just brings a different thought to how you seek someone, it then changes the way you will interact with them. And so if I view you're just homeless, or people will say, and I've heard this in people not even meaning to be derogatory, but I saw this bum here, and I'm like, but there's this kind of concept that they have with that type of language, where if you say someone who's unhoused, I'm like, it begins to impart some more dignity on them. So if they're unhoused, if it's a neighbor without doors, right? Now it's not just this person who's on the street, but you are a neighbor.
Well, who is my neighbor?
Right. Well, there you go.
It's like that was in the Bible.
Right? It's like someone talked about that years ago for us.
That's good.
It's good.
No,
Good.
yeah.
Language is important, so thanks for teaching us that. All right. Any closing thoughts? Are we good?
Thank you so much for blessing our community and partnering
Yeah.
with us.
Thank you for partnering
All right.
with us. You guys are amazing.
We're so glad you're here. We hope you will join us next week on Behind the Pulpit. And if you don't have a church, join us on Sunday morning. We're continuing a Luke. We're going to talk about the Lord's Prayer this week. So it's going to be exciting. All right. God bless.